We'll get going. And again, thank you so much for coming to our wastewater treatment plant project and bond presentation. And I'm speaking to the four of you and Jack, because everyone else had to come. I think you all know I'm Jeremy, the mayor, and I'm really excited that we're even at this point. There's a long way to go on projects like this, but for 2.5, 3 years since I started to run for mayor, this has been a big focus of mine, how to address our aging, failing infrastructure. Um, I'm joined by some wonderful folks tonight, some very experienced and talented people who are working really hard on this. I want to just start off by emphasizing state statute is very strict. We are not promoting the way you vote on this matter. We are here to educate you on the project. So if anything sounds like it's a promotion or hopefully we'll stay well away from that. It's not intended to be. You vote however you like, and we're just here to educate you. To start off with, we've got Sarah Linz, our finance director in the back in the blue. Sarah is incredibly experienced. She's worked on bonds and manages all of our money and the utilities and keeps us in really amazing financial shape. We've also got Holly Ellis here, our public works director. Holly has been focused on this project for the better part of a year with myself and some others. Holly, when I interviewed her, she said, "I love pipes." So Holly is in her element. We also, for staff, we've got Devin Hull and Zach here who are actually our operators and run the plant. And if you can call it running that, it's more of a response, very reactive type of thing because of the age. Of course, we have Police Chief and his wife in the audience. Thanks for coming, Coons. And then we've got Kyle from Keller and Associates. That's our engineering firm. Kyle is a Sandpoint High graduate and born and bred here. Maybe not born, but I know bred and educated. So Kyle, thank you. Working close to home. And then one last person, Rachel, wherever she is. Oh, there she is. Rachel's our new project manager, works under Holly. And Rachel's been in the Virgin Islands for a number of years, working on water and wastewater and community projects. So she has been a great help. So just to start off without belaboring any of this, I think the first thing we just want to talk about is if we can pull up. Oh yeah, there we go. You know, the purpose here is just to educate you. We're going to go through a little bit of a slide presentation explaining the project, and then we're going to break out into public walk around and ask questions. But since it's just four of you, I think we can answer your questions right here. And when we look at, we can go to the next slide there, sort of the wastewater project. Obviously, the question is why. Not unique to Sandpoint. We face this across the country. There was an article in the Capital Sun the other day. There's over $1 billion with a B of wastewater projects that are in need of funding in the state of Idaho. The Idaho Conservation League put out an email today with their annual report on wastewater systems. More than 50% of the systems in the state of Idaho failed and exceeded their permits, violated their permit for effluent, which means water that comes out of the plant and goes either on the ground or into a body of water. So we're not unique in this sense. We've known about this project for a long time. We've done a lot of exploration. A lot of people, former council members, have put a lot of work in with community groups. We explored a lot of options. Some included relocating the plant up off of Baldy. And we've looked at regionalization. We've looked at a number of ways to tackle this challenge. But at the end of the day, the reality is this is a plant that has numerous components that are going on 70 years old. even more numerous components that are over 50 years into their life and has pretty much met the end of its useful life. And I just want to call out to Devin and Zach because I'm not kidding when I say these guys um, keep us in within our permit limits and are heroic in the things they do to keep our water clean and safe. If you're not aware, just want to touch on why we have a wastewater plant. I think everyone in the audience was alive in 1972 when the Clean Water Act was adopted. That initial adoption of the Clean Water Act came with a $24 billion check from the federal government to help communities uh, construct and build wastewater treatment. By some research and estimates over the life of the Clean Water Act, over $650 billion have been provided in grants to communities to fund these projects. Now, that's important because we currently have something like a $37 trillion deficit. And despite my best efforts, and I assure you they were robust and consistent, we were unable to get any direct federal earmarks for this project so far. Spoken with our senators, spoken with our congressional representatives, spoken with the governor's office and state DQ. And I'm not saying there won't be funding from the federal government, but the way their program works right now is we have to at least secure the bond and the financing to do the project to really know what it does to rates and before they'll really give us their last best shot at how much grant funding will be available. I do want to thank the governor in the state of Idaho. They gave us almost 40% of the money they have available for sewer and water facilities this year. That was just $3.8 million. So that's what we're working with, $3.8 million. They did offer us about a $30 million loan. But as you've heard, this project is about 130 million. So we'll get into some of those details. But I do want to just emphasize that it's an existing problem. It's not because of growth. It's because this is an old plant that's worn out. We do risk water quality right now. We have had violations to our permit. As I mentioned, it's a struggle every day to keep the pipes going, and when they explode or a motor breaks down or a circuit board from 1975 blows up and there's not a replacement, Devin and Zach are literally MacGyvers every day down on that plant, day and night. But it's not just because the plant's old. We face some unique geographical challenges here. If you're not aware, we sit on about 300 feet of clay here in Sandpoint, and all of our sewer lines run down to the plant, gravity to lift stations, which pump it up, and then they run down further. And those sewer lines are in trenches. And if you know anything about clay, when water hits clay, it doesn't absorb too much. It finds its lowest point. And as a result, we have a lot of something called I&I. And that is basically water that infiltrates into the pipes, into the trenches, and ends up coming through the plant. It's not sewage, it's rain on snow. It's water that is causing our plant to have very high flows at times. Other contributors to that are things like storm drains. We've spent a lot of time and money smoke testing our sewer lines to see if the homes are hooked up, see if the buildings are hooked up, the roof drains are hooked up. We've found a number of them. We've cured a lot of them. We've seen improvement, but the engineers basically have said we've got all the low-hanging fruit. We're not going to be able to reduce our inflows significantly unless we do extraordinary efforts such as sending people into the basement of every house in Sandpoint, which I don't think would be very popular. We've done something called slip lining. We have spent millions of dollars sending basically a plastic tube up our sewer lines. Then they inflate it, and then they cut out all those sewer drains. That's improved our inflows from I&I tremendously, but we still have millions of gallons a day during rain on snow events that rush down to the plant and cause the plant sometimes not to operate within the parameters of the permit. Um, I bring that all up because it's not growth. It's not anyone's fault in this room. It is simply a contribution of many factors, and we're going to do everything we can to address that and fix that. And most importantly, we'll want to protect the quality of the water in the river that we all enjoy and love. I just want to quickly call Devin out real quickly. Devin, can you just give me or the audience, the four and Jack, um, I should know your names. I know the Ekerts. What are your names? If you don't, Sandy, hi. Hi, Mary. You want to give the Ekerts and Sandy and Mary just like a 2-minute snapshot of a bad day at the plant, like the pipes bursting and raw sewage flowing into your office or something.
Boy, easiest one would probably be just the digester failure we had. God, has that been 2 years now? We were all gone for the day. Luckily, funnily enough, one of the operators forgot his shoes, so he comes back. I'm on the vacation in the Monarchs, so barely have cell service, and he sends me this picture of a black flowing stream going down towards the river. I'm like, that's not good. So I call him, see what's going on. It turns out the digester line had failed. And in the wisdom of 1984, nobody thought to put a check valve anywhere in that system. So the entire 250,000 plus gallons of digested waste were heading out to Pondere River. Luckily, somebody caught it in time for me to walk them through which valve to close and basically shut down all solids operation before it made it to the river. And that's becoming more of the norm than the exception. I mean, 84 doesn't seem like that long ago. I mean, I was born in 84. I don't feel that old.
Van Halen. So
But yeah, but for, iron pipes, some of these, I think Zach can attest to this. We replaced a sink drain the other day because he went to adjust it and put his finger through it. It's,
through a piece of pipe at the
Yeah.
the facility. Yep.
it's all black iron. It's all, I hate to say it, lowest bidder. It's all
Old
get
low
it
bid
done,
project.
old. It's just past its prime.
Yep. And in comparison to a modern plant, I've gotten to tour a few. I joke with these guys. I went down to see Haley's plant. The operator, instead of running out and getting RV hose and duct tape and trying to find the plans for the valve and hope that they don't break when they turn them off, a modern plant, you literally sit in front of a screen like this with all of your inflows, all of your digesters, and you literally click a mouse and the whole thing just happens. So I joke with these guys that someday. Anyways, I just want to bring that up because these two deserve awards that we can't give them, but other than accolades. So thank you. So moving on from here, just want to kind of bring Holly into this and then eventually Kyle. I've kind of talked on a little too much, but Holly, do you want to just talk about the plant and some of the specifics of the scope and benefits of the project?
Hi, please, thanks, Melissa. I'll give a brief rundown on what we're looking to, and then Kyle will kind of dive into more of the details here. But what we're looking to do is modernize our wastewater treatment plant. We're looking at our headwork system so that we don't have rags and sand that are clogging up the rest of our processes. We're also going to be looking at our primary treatment. We're looking at a new filter, updating our aeration basins, clarifiers, UV disinfection, getting away from using chlorine as our disinfection. It's a safety component. Also trying to get away from chemical use as much as feasible. Across the whole site, we'll be implementing SCADA improvements, just as Mr. Mayor described. A lot of these operations can be automated, so it's not relying on an operator to turn valves. It can be operated behind a screen. Improving our electrical supply, standby, and a new admin building and lab. It truly is a reconstruction of the entire wastewater treatment plant. And this is all to bring us into reliability. And I'll take a step back, and Kyle will dive into the deeper details of where we're going. But going back to, I guess, 1940s, that's when our primary clarifiers that were still in use today came over from the Farragut Naval Station. Fast forward to 1995, the inflow and infiltration, otherwise known as I&I, that's when the city really honed in on I&I being an issue. And we recognized that it wasn't just wastewater that was reaching our wastewater treatment plant, it was groundwater and stormwater. So since 1995, there have been efforts to try to eliminate that that I&I, those rain on snow events, those wet weather events from entering a wastewater treatment plant. We've done things exactly as the mayor's already described, trying to make our collection system watertight by replacing pipelines, replacing manholes, replacing laterals. We've done a lot of inspections, a lot of efforts to date. 25% of our collection system has been replaced in the past 8 years. We've seen a good reduction in I&I, and it's going to continue, or those efforts are not going to stop. They'll be ongoing. It'll be a continual effort of Sandpoint having a wastewater treatment system that we are taking on I&I. Unfortunately, what we found, JB was the engineer at the time. They did a whole study, and we really considered, could we eliminate I&I to a point that we could build a smaller plant? And what they found was, unfortunately, the answer was no. We do need to build a larger plant. We cannot, it's not cost effective to continue these efforts to reduce I&I. The other bit of history I'll share, some of you may recall, we had a conversation about relocating the wastewater treatment plant up to the Baldy Disc Golf Course site. That's what it's operating as now today. We had an engineering firm look at 3 alternatives. How could we get wastewater treatment plant to that alternative site? And ultimately, all 3 scenarios were very complex, many lift stations, many large lift stations. It include main lines across railroad crossings, waterways, private property acquisition. There were 3 alternatives. We had a community advisory committee at that time who advised against either of any of those alternatives, and advised that their recommendation was to keep the plant at the existing site, and council confirmed. So while we've looked at trying to look at other locations for the site, trying to improve our collection system, ultimately here we are today with needing to replace our plant and upgrade really all of our processes there.
Yeah, and if you followed along on the James E. Russell facility, if that's what siting a racquetball court does to the community, I can't even imagine siting a new facility for a wastewater plant. So we're going to keep it where it is. Makes a lot of sense. It's going to be better. It's going to have odor control. It's going to have much more robust, redundant, safe, and efficient treatment. So we'll let Kyle jump in on that. And before he does, I just want to let you all know that this didn't start last month or last week. We've been working on this for about 1.5 years, and it began with something called a preliminary engineering report that Kyle and Keller Engineering performed for us. That really went through everything on the site. What's there? What's the soil like? What's feeding it? What could be reused? What needs to be demolished? How do you demolish and run a plant and rebuild a plant all at the same time? Kind of like changing the wings on an airplane while you're in the air. It looked at different types of treatment technology, membrane versus activated sludge versus traditional, and others. So that preliminary engineering design kind of gives us this number that we're looking at right now. It's not the final design of the plant. It's just this is where we um, will go. It works. It's very functional. It's very thoughtful, but it's not the final design. That's something that would happen as we secure funding. So with that, Kyle, please tell us anything you would like about wastewater and how it relates to this site.
Yeah, and I think you and Holly did a really good job summarizing a lot of that information. I would just say, like, overarching theme is at the end of the day, the city and Keller are going to be flexible in how this project comes into fruition and how we design it and phase it based on the available funding and grant dollars. And I say that because at the stage that we're at with the preliminary design report, it's kind of like a 30% house drawing where it's like you kind of know where the bedrooms are at, you know the dimensions, maybe you have some profiles and elevations of the house, but you don't have your appliances, you don't have everything picked out, right? And the intent there is to understand, okay, what could this potentially cost, and what are we going to accomplish with this project? And so that really refined that, and as indicated from Holly and Jeremy, we're virtually replacing almost every piece of infrastructure on this site. There's opportunities to do rehab on a few of these sites, but I think we're all sitting here because we're trying to avoid that, to just kick it down the road further. And that's really what this PER is focused on, is how do we avoid kicking the can down the road further? And this is what currently is depicted, is to avoid that. And it incorporates everything from, as indicated, it's going to help improve operations. It's going to enable these guys to do more with less, whether it's controlling the treatment plant from their phone. They can remotely, they're not having to spend 10 hours a week dealing with maintenance items that they shouldn't have to. But the reason they are is because of the equipment and systems are just so outdated. So the interesting thing though is, treatment technologies have made some pretty good changes in the last 30 years. But at the end of the day, what we're proposing is not some crazy, we're the first serial code number for this technology that we might think that works. What we're proposing and what we're implementing is tried and true. We've done it throughout the Northwest. It's throughout the world. And it's a very common and proven treatment technology, and it's not that different from what they're currently doing on a lot of aspects. So I think that was a big other factor with regards to being able to implement it, and then also being able to operate it and maintain it, because that's what the city's familiar with, and it is well proven to be able to achieve those future and current permit limits that are currently conveyed to us.
I think that's,
yeah, you and Holly did a good job covering a lot of that. So I don't know.
We can open it up for questions in a
Yeah.
minute, but so let's go on to the next. I think we've kind of covered that. There are some questions out there. You'll see on this next slide, we talk about potential phasing, and it's a good question that people have asked. Why are we going for the full rebuild? And shouldn't we just eat the elephant one bite at a time? Imagine we did a $20 million element of this, and that's a lot of money, or $30 million, and we brought one component up to speed. It's very likely that we could potentially have what they call an upset or an event down there and still have violations of our permit. So that's sort of the concern with a very slow phased approach. We have come up with a potential phasing plan, but in general, we were thinking that if we spend a fair amount of money and then we still have raw sewage or violations, that won't make anyone happy. But we're going to talk a little bit about a bond, and we've got Sarah here and Holly here and Kyle and myself. I'll just start it off. It's basically an attempt to spread these costs over 40 years. It's basically very similar to a mortgage on your house. In Idaho, it does require voter approval. And that's what will be on the ballot this November 4th. The amount we're seeking is 130 million. Um, and we wouldn't spend that money the next day. We're not even sure we would spend all of it, but it does give us the authority to go and begin the design and start moving forward on discussions. Some of these federal entities and programs, as I mentioned earlier, require you to have the project bonded for before they will really make their final decision on funding. So it's really a requirement for us to at least attempt to get this bond passed in order to take the next step. When we think about a bond, it's not paid for by property taxes. It's paid for by users of the utility and through sewer rates. Um, and in general, it's more manageable. It's like anything, we are going to pay interest on that, but we will be at whatever the interest rate. There are some government programs that are a little bit lower, but even those are having difficulty right now being funded through the federal government to get those lower interest programs. What would either Sarah or Holly or Kyle like to add to sort of the background of a bond? And we have another member of the public. Welcome, ma'am. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming. I'm Jeremy, the mayor. This is Holly, our public works director. Kyle's our engineer. Devin and Zach are our operators down there. And we're going to be talking for just a couple more minutes, and then we're going to answer any questions you might have.
I think what I'd like to highlight on the bond is really highlight it's not a blank check. This is what we're proposing is a revenue bond, which is repaid just from our wastewater funds and our revenues. So it's just an impact to your sewer bill. To highlight again, it's not a tax. Using this bond authority will let us spread the cost of over the useful life of the plant, so it's not all at once. The alternative to a bond would be cash funding. If we were to seek a cash funding alternative, that's upfronting the cost of the project. So we would have to raise our rates at a much steeper, to a much steeper and much faster peak. So in this scenario, you'd be looking at more of a 600% increase to your rate in a short period of time if we were to cash fund it. So again, that financing, the bond will allow us to phase that work in and stretch out and keep the rate a little more manageable, understanding it's still a large rate increase, but that loan opportunity really spreads out the payments over time. And there are low interest financing, low interest state and federal programs, DEQ, that's Department of Environmental Quality, state SRF, USDA, rural development. These are all programs that pair very well with bonding.
And we do have, Sarah's given me a thumbs up that we've hit everything. And the city's had bonds in the past. We had water bonds for our water treatment plant. Was that a $12 million bond? About 2 bonds. So the city's done this before. We do bring in outside bond legal counsel that manages this. Depending on what route we go, which program, these might be bonds that your retirement account might invest in, or you may invest in municipal bonds, tax-free municipal bonds maybe. So yeah, that's the big thing though, is that it's not a blank check. We don't want to draw on that $130 million. We want to supplement it as much as we possibly can with federal grants, state grants, and cost containment on the actual design of the plant once we get into the fine-grained details of that design. So we can move on to next steps here, and we'll open it up to questions. I'm sure there's going to be lots of great questions. Holly, why don't you take away with this one?
So today we are working on our preliminary engineering report. This picked up our facility plan from 2018. This is a DEQ required plan, and it refined the details of that plan. We got to a little, to go back to Kyle's analogy with the house, our drawings for the house got a little bit more refined. That document is under review by staff. It's here tonight. We'll have outreach educational opportunities for folks to provide input. It's going to go to council for adoption. If this bond is approved, it will allow us to move very quickly. So our next steps, once that PER is approved and we have the bond, we're going full speed ahead, and we will engage an engineer and a contractor and a progressive contracting, maybe a CMGC or a design build, so that we can build this project as quickly and as rapidly as possible. So the bond authority will allow us to move quickly. In parallel to that, we'll be seeking grant opportunities. So we do have SRF loans. We're on the list for $38 million loans from the state of Idaho, and about a $3 million loan grant as part of that. Once we have this bond in hand, we'll be able to go to USDA Rural Development and ask for loans and funding and other grants. So design and construction will really ramp up, and in parallel to that, we'll be seeking all the grant opportunities that we can.
Yeah, and if you're been here for a while, if you're not aware, I believe this will be the largest public works project in Bonner County history in terms of dollar amounts. The byway was 100 and maybe 10 million, I believe. In today's dollars would be more, but yeah, this would be the largest project. It will carry us through 2045, the duration of this, and likely beyond. But that's the design parameters for the flows and the sizing. I want to emphasize that it's not growth related. When you buy or build a new house and hook into our system, you do pay something called a new user facility fee, and you are not existing residents are not paying for growth. This is an existing deficiency that all users of the system have to share the cost on. So with that, I think, is that about all of it? Ollie, we can take some questions. Oh, last one. Community oversight and accountability. Yeah, so the purpose of tonight is please educate yourself, educate your friends, educate your family. If those in the audience or in the community are concerned about oversight, first and foremost, the funds cannot be used for anything other than wastewater improvements. And then secondly, we do have independent audits of the project, of our books. All of the plans and contracts will go to City Council for approval. We do have public reporting, and we will be providing updates and full transparency on every stage of this project and every dollar that's spent. So, yeah, with that, our 5 or even non-public members, employees, let's have some questions. What are you hearing? What's in the back of your mind? Again, this is education, so how can we address your questions? Go ahead. Yeah. It's a great question. I'm going to let our engineer speak to that, Kyle.
Yeah, so with these facilities, IDAPA code and DEQ govern the design of these facilities. And traditionally, it is a 20-year planning period that you plan for your facilities. Now, as indicated in Jeremy, these facilities are 60 years plus. What is driving that is more the overall population growth tied to that 20-year mark. So all of the facilities, as far as concrete work, grading, buildings, will likely last much longer than that. But as far as overall capacity and what is projected in the comp plan for growth, it captures that 20-year planning criteria for that growth. So it would be abnormal to come in and plan for a 60-year population growth that no one in this room would get right. And even 20 years, as we're all aware, is quite far-fetched in nailing that on the head, but that is standard practice and in accordance with state code and DEQ's requirements for all facilities.
40.
Up to 40.
Up to 40. Yeah, great question. I see where you're going. And the likelihood is that, as Kyle's mentioning, there are elements of a plant as you grow that would need to be expanded. So I'm not going to stand here and say we wouldn't need a larger screen in 20 years or a larger widget. But it's not the whole facility. It would more than likely be very specific elements that we would potentially have to address. Go ahead, yeah. We presently only serve city limits except for one exception on Pine Street, Lulu Court. That is the only non-city property that pays sewer or is hooked into our sewer. So it would be every toilet, every sewer hookup in the city limits of Sandpoint. People or taps or hookups on the utility account side, hookups, yeah, what is it, 30?
I'm looking at Michelle. Is it?
Oh. So 2,500 residential and about 900 businesses is some of those businesses are commercial, like Lighthouse. So they pay a different rate, a different proportional rate. They don't pay the same thing a residence pays. But you're getting very to the point about the challenge that we face, which is this plant is probably going to cost $130 million. And when the Clean Water Act was put in place, the federal government said, we're going to fund 85% of these plants across the country with grants. And as of today, we have $3.8 million from the state of Idaho and zero from the feds.
Physical question. Is it possible to enhance the user base, such as Monterey, Ruby? Is that physically or financially viable to do that?
So the question is, can we enhance the user base by potentially looking at Ponderay or Kootenai? A couple of things happened along the way here, and there's other potential users that could provide us sewage, such as Schweitzer in the future. My first month and a half as mayor, January, February of 2024, Ponderay Kootenai Sewer District came and said, we are in trouble with DEQ. We have to do something. Will you take our sewage? And I said, I don't even know what I don't know yet, so I can't say yes. And they said, we have to take action pretty soon and either design and build their own new plant or proceed with like a regionalization conversation. And I said, I won't be able to tell you until I get more information about where we're at in our plant. So they proceeded with an upgrade of their plant that will carry them forward for a long time. In the long run, there could be opportunities to take on other users. There's pros and cons to that, for sure. But it is certainly an opportunity maybe in the future. Yeah, because they're doing land application up there and nitrogen and phosphorus all end up down in the valley.
It's gotta be, think long and hard about communicating. This room should be full.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
And, this is really a big issue.
It is.
And so it's, the good thought's gotta go into how this is gonna be communicated. And maybe with a little dose of alarmist, the prices, because we're talking about a lot of money here.
Yeah. You're not kidding, Mr. Eckert.
And it comes to realization, this is really, really a big deal.
Yeah. We do have a PR firm that's helping us educate voters. They've done this across the state successfully. This is our first outreach. We're doing one in a couple weeks, the 18th of October, is that right? On a Saturday morning here. We may have to adapt. I was joking saying we need to go someplace that has free beer and food, but yeah, clearly we're going to have to adapt and figure out how to engage and reach people. Today, residents of Sandpoint got a postcard in the mail with a QR code, taking them to our website. We have some great information on the website, walks through the whole plant, the whole plan, the history. Um, uh, so you're absolutely right. This room should be filled. This is one of the most consequential decisions that the city residents and voters have faced and will face for some time. Go ahead.
Facebook, the reader, I mean, I've seen your stuff all over the place, and I think those people have,
Thank you.
they just, I don't think they realize what this is. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna- Yeah, I'm explaining.
Sure. Yeah.
If one doesn't pass, and we have to pay for it, we can put it on the state, and
No, the state, well, the state's provided us A-OK for about $38 million. But there's strings attached with that, which is, no, this is only if you build the full $130 million project. So if we don't pass a bond, I don't think if the bond isn't, I don't want to advocate. I'm just saying, if the bond fails, then we don't know what the state will say about the 38 million, because they said, here's what we can do as a state. We can offer you a loan. That's assuming, and it's pretty strict, that you come up with the rest of the money, and this is how much we can help you on the project. That's pretty much all the state has to offer us for a loan. The bond is going to go out to probably either a private market bond, where people would bid on it, investors, or Sarah's gonna clarify. So if the bond doesn't pass, yeah. Yep.
This is part of, if this doesn't pass, we don't get that money from the state. That is part of the bond. So if that doesn't pass, we can't even take that out. So that would have to pass to be able to take advantage of getting that money.
Yeah. Right. Right. So this is that second, if it's a no vote. Yes.
So what the bond allows us to do is go out to the market and actually get more money for the bond. And usually we do that in several phases of it. And so let's say we anticipate we need $20 million next year to do phase
Design.
we would go out and get a bond for that. Then the next phase, we would go out and get another bond. There'd be several bonds that we would go out for. So once it's passed, if it's passed. Oh.
Passes.
The money part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So two things will happen if it doesn't pass. The first is I will go to the whole circle of elected officials, senators, congressmen, say, what am I supposed to do? My sewer plant is literally putting raw sewage in the river. We tried to pass a bond. Our voters rejected it. We could raise our rates and start collecting that money over time, amass, let's say 20 million, and do one little piece of it. and then the next 20 million, another piece of it. And during that time period, at any time, the system, some old piece could fail and we could have another violation. So it's it's a conundrum. So if the bond doesn't pass, we would proceed, because if we don't, the fines are exorbitant if we continue, and just morally and as a community, we can't pollute our river, our water. So we would have to continue raising rates to accomplish whatever the greatest failure is going to be at the plant, whether it's the disinfection or the raw sewage intake or the digester. And so that's sort of what we're doing right now. Our rates are higher than most communities, much higher. We're doing, this year, we're doing a very small piece of the plant, something called a dewatering machine. Basically, it takes the sludge and it squeezes the water out, so they can take the dry sludge now and haul it to the farmer, puts it on his fields, not for human consumption. So we're doing, to some degree, that in bits and pieces right now. Kyle or Holly, anything to add there in terms of the $600, 600% increase?
Yeah, I would just make one other comment. The other option in the right ask is to do a revenue bond to seek the public's approval for this, right? You want the public buy-in. It shows that they support the project and they understand the need. The other option that some communities take, and I think that was a no-go for the city, was to do a judicial confirmation where you go to a judge and say these are ordinary and necessary improvements, and we need you to give us permission to incur debt. And it does not go to the public. And that wasn't the intent. The intent was to do everything we can to educate the public, to get their support and understanding why we do this, because when the public supports it, it's just a more successful project all around, instead of going to a judge. But as you understand, if these improvements are continued to be postponed, kicked down the road, it puts the city in a very difficult spot where now they have violations. Now they're contaminating the public waterway. They're making impacts to the environment and putting people at risk. Those improvements just become even more expensive because now they're reactive. It's emergency. Oh, this broke. We've got to fix this. Well, instead of waiting 6 months to get this done, it needs to be here tomorrow. So it's obviously a very challenging situation. And I think the intent would be to get public support so that they can do this. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Mrs. Eager? That's my understanding. Yep.
I expect a very low turnout, because it's not going to be high priority on a lot of people's minds. So it's a simple majority of the voters.
Yes. And I have to believe that, if it passes and the project's 130 million, and we get no federal funding, our rates would roughly go up to over $200 a month just to flush a toilet. That equates to about 4% of our median household income. So if one of you lives alone in a house, $2,400 a year to flush your toilet, I have to believe that that number is so outrageous that someone at the federal or state level would recognize that small communities can't pay for $100 million plants with 3,500 users. So again, if the bond does pass, that same data will be brought to these elected officials and to our legislators, and I will press that point, and the data will show that this community would be very stressed to pay those rates to support this plant.
And just to add quickly, for perspective, 2% is typically the max target. So we would be double, nearly or over double what would be a typical utility bill in Sandpoint. So from a grant perspective, that would put us at a more competitive or really show a very strong need for Sandpoint to get grant funding in lieu of loans. I think we've got a good sense that loans are out there, loans we can get. We really want grants. We really want debt forgiveness in our next steps.
Sir?
Clarification. What I read in Holly's comments, I understand you, if it does pass, you really need it to pass in order to get the grant.
Correct.
With the funds. And, you know, the other part of that is how much of the total funds are anticipated for grants and how much would the taxpayers have to drop. Leave it the rate where it is now, taxpayers, all the extra money comes from.
We would need, so we don't have any commitment from grants. So we don't know that answer. We don't know if the feds, one of our senators will earmark, X amount of dollars in the federal budget for Idaho, for Sandpoint's sewer plant. They tend not to do that too much anymore. But we just don't know what the federal funding to the state revolving loan fund will be. We don't know what the federal funding will be towards some of the other programs that support this kind of infrastructure. So when November 4th comes, the assumption is that 100% of it would be on rate payers potentially, but we will do everything we can to knock on every door and ask everyone for a grant.
And one piece of clarity. So we need that bond so we can have loans in hand. And then that bond will also be so we can get grant match. So we don't necessarily need a bond for every grant that's out there, but the grant match opportunity is where that bond comes into play.
Yeah, I'd maybe make a comment. 3 years ago, I think there's a really high probability that there could be upwards of 15 to 20% in grant dollars for the project, and I say that pretty comfortably. Obviously, things have changed since then, and it's really hard to put your thumb on what that might be. But just to reinforce, there's been a ton of work behind the scenes with other funding agencies over the last 6 months that we have coordinated directly with, that we intend to apply with, that they're very well aware of the project, and all those things add up to usually a pretty successful application. And to some degree, a good example of that is when the city previously applied for an LOI through the SRF funding avenue. There was about 50 applicants, and we were kind of in the middle of the pack. And when we applied this last year, we were able to, I think, rank number 3 and get, of the 3 projects funded, a large portion of that, as Jeremy indicated. And with that, what's also on the table is they intend to fund annual projects or additional amounts down the road if this project continues to move forward. So there could be additional grant dollars through them like they've already provided. So in some perspective, yes, it's daunting looking at the 130 million, but there's a lot of little things that have come into place that are a lot better than some communities that don't have funding available. They haven't continued to develop their design, and they're not going out for a revenue bond, in the fall and stuff like that. So there's been a lot of things that have moved forward in the right direction.
Yeah, we are talking to the highest levels, staff and electeds in the state about this project, and they're all aware of it. Do you feel educated? A little bit. Good, good. We've accomplished our goal. You need to, friends, family, please educate people. This website is great. It is really a nutshell. It tells you everything that you need to learn about the plant and the project. We will continue to refine our outreach and engagement. Clearly, this isn't working. I may need to walk up and down the streets with flyers or something. I don't know. But we want to make sure our community is aware and educated, and any questions that they have that we can get answered. Before we convene this, we're just going to probably turn off the recording, but we'll stick around, can walk through the plant. I want to thank the NRCS, the Soil Water Conservation District for being here. They brought a really cool model that shows how the landscape works and how the water flows through it. So even with some pretty dynamic, they actually pour water on that. So check that out. And you know how to get in touch with us. So thanks for coming out. Thanks for your civic engagement tonight. And thanks staff for coming. Good job.